The reason I'm wearing a hat is because I'm having a really bad hair day. I need a haircut. Seriously though, I'm making light of a situation that has proven to be quite difficult. I have successfully pushed the engine up and dropped the subframe down. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do that, because really that's going to be step one to doing headers or to doing this major oil pump job that I'm doing right now, because both oil pans have to come off the bottom of the engine and there simply is not enough clearance when you have that subframe in the way. I got this 1,500 pound screw jack, which has proven to be very, very handy. It's a shorty, so it goes 36 inches to 70 inches, which is perfect for this lift because this Stratus 9000E lifts about, if I recall correctly, around 40 to 42 inches off the ground. So it ends up being perfect to support this right there. And the reason I am supporting it right there is because, well, first of all, I had to take out these two bolts. This oil pan here on the bottom end of the engine has to come off. But first I got to take this primary off and then some other things. But the question is, did I make enough room? I believe I did. So I dropped the rack, as you can see, so it's kind of hanging there. I had to pull the steering shaft out. So make sure you mark your spline up there, somewhere up there. And in the process, I ruined one of my oxygen sensors on that side, so that sucks. But you can see how much space I now have, because that's one of the motor mounts. So huge gap in between the subframe and the motor mount, which is perfect. So I've got at least 3.5 to 4 inches right now of clearance. So if we look around this way, it's a little bit better view. And there's another motor mount right up there. To have access to all the bolts, first of all. Second of all, there is a stud on that upper oil pan right up in there. And that stud is a long stud, so it has to pull down and clear. Pretty easy once you do this. What was holding me up was the rack. I wasn't sure if that had to be dropped or not, and it really does. That's what was actually holding me up. So you undo the covers here for your subframe for your motor mounts, and then you have access to 2 nuts inside. They're 17 millimeters each. This is, by the way, this is after you remove your exhaust and all that stuff. So I'm just going over some of the things if you've never left an engine in and had to do the bottom of the engine. I'm just talking through that right now. And of course, you need to make sure everything's supported. So you can undo these motor mounts with the subframe still bolted in. That's not a problem. But when you start unbolting the subframe, you need to make sure everything's supported, or that engine is just going to drop. And if you're on a lift like this, that is a very dangerous thing to be pitching weight around. And I wedged wood in there. So I pried it down with a long screwdriver because the suspension is holding it up. I pried it down with a long screwdriver and custom cut a piece of 2x4 and wedged it in there. So if you ever want to get a vehicle lift for your GS, that's how you do it. Just kidding, don't do that. That'd be lame. All right, guys, next step in the process is to get the dipstick out. While that sounds easy, I had to take the heat shield off to the manifold. And if you look right up in here, it's right up, you can barely see it in the background there in the dark. So that's what I'm going after now in order to get that dipstick out. Next is the oil level sensor, and that is actually on the passenger side, right up in there. And there's 4 10 millimeter bolts, which should not be in there with very much torque. So dipstick is out and gone. It's kind of hard to pull up through that manifold, but it's doable. And now I'm going after the sensor. It's the oil level sensor. Be careful when you're taking it out, don't force it. But you can fish it out of there with the engine in place. You got to get the oil filter housing off. First thing you need to do is loosen the compressor 14 mil that I'm sort of zoomed on right there. You loosen that. That'll give you the ability to move the compressor out of the way so that you can access those two, which are 12 millimeter. So let me see if I can demonstrate here. See, I can push it up now and access that. Now, question is, will this leak oil when I undo it? So I have my oil thing there ready. Let's get to it. Yes, it will leak oil. So heads up. Also, this 14 had to be loosened, and right when I loosened it, that whole thing started leaking oil up there. So I haven't taken that all the way off yet. And then I ran that 14 back in to kind of hold the compressor in place because it was really loose. So you might have a bit of a juggling act. Okay, so you got to take a wrench and hold this here with it's a 14. This was on here, I think like that. And then you undo the nut, and now you're gonna basically unscrew the stud. So I just wanted you to see how that worked. Okay, this is called the figure 8 gasket, or 8 gasket. It's on the back of the oil filter housing, and boy, oh boy, is it smashed. I mean, it wasn't leaking, but this is a good indicator of what all of these gaskets in the engine are gonna feel like and look like. It's a little bit pliable still, but that's why you replace them. All right, next is the crankshaft position sensor, which I already removed. And now it's going to be this oil pan number 2. And I believe it's 2 nuts and 12 bolts, whatever, something like that. 12 total, maybe 14, but pretty straightforward to get those off. Low torque value. Here we go. Putty knife around the whole thing. And then I left this nut on and the other one, which is on the back side of it, on, so that when it dropped, it went onto the nut, so that way it didn't fall down all over the place. So it's ready to come off. Okay, next up is this next oil pan, which has a bunch of 12mm bolts and a couple nuts. Now, you might be wondering, why aren't you taking out the oil strainer? The factory service manual says to take it off after you get this pan out. And I think the reasoning is right there. That bar, support bar right there, is kind of in the way. But I think it would be a good idea to get the strainer off when you have the engine still in place, because there's a high probability that you'll bang into it when you're trying to fish this thing out. So I might go ahead and try to do that real quick. Yep, it can be removed. That bolt that is right up in there is a little bit tricky, but it's short, so it's easy to get out. So yes, you can get rid of that strainer. Do not forget the gasket that's on here, and look at how brittle this thing is. It is so brittle. All right, I gotta work on that. Wow. Okay, the factory service manual does have a sequence. So you get a long screwdriver and you're gonna pry on each side. I'm doing this with one hand. So you can see that it's coming away from the block from that FIPG. So I'm gonna keep going until I get this thing pried off, but that's how you do it. You alternate sides, 3 spots on each side. There you have it, folks. It can be done. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And don't let people tell you you have to pull a motor. Although I will agree with them, this would be a lot easier, but there's that pretty little bottom end. Now for the oil pump. Next up, you got to get all this old FIPG off. So I'm not going to show, but I'm going to basically scrape it out, make sure it's all cleaned up. Don't forget to flip it over and get this surface all cleaned up. look around because there are going to be little bits and stuff, even when you think you've cleaned it out well enough. So I highly suggest that you get compressed air and wear some goggles and blow this thing out. Next up, this oil pan. This thing's got a lot of residue on it. Everything except the strainer is all cleaned up. Now with the strainer, I just wiped it down and then I'm gonna spray the opposite direction of the flow to try to dislodge anything that's in there. Let's take a look. Might be a few little pieces of crud, but nothing too bad. But I'm gonna go ahead and try to dislodge that stuff and get it out. Okay, the last thing to clean up is the block. Got some residual gasket on here. And then it's gonna be the oil pump right there. All right, the 8 bolts are out of the oil pump. One place that you can pry it from the block is over here. See how it's starting to move? Now this compressor's kind of in the way and I'm doing this one-handed, so I'm not gonna video it, but basically alternate back and forth, move your compressor a little bit, and then pry it with a long screwdriver and it should come out. Okay. Where is that pesky O-ring? Oh, it's up there. Uh-oh, dripping oil. Right in there. There it is, guys. That is the $4 culprit right there. So I made it all the way to the peak of the mountain, and now I am almost over the hump. Oil seepage out of this, up and around here, and down. Hard to tell just looking at this. Let's zoom in and see if we can see anything. I don't know. It's pretty hard to tell. But that pesky little $4 piece of crap right there. Man, what a job. Look at how brittle this thing is. I mean, it's 27 years old. Here's your seal. You might be able to get it out, your old seal. Yeah, so it just pops out. This is a relief hole right here that everybody talks about, especially on the super forums. And they say, don't knock the new seal in too far or you'll cover up that relief hole. It's always a good idea to do a comparison of the new pump and the old. So I want to draw your attention to something right here. It's missing a couple studs right there. See those studs? So you might want to figure that out before you put this thing in, because that'll be much more difficult. So the 2-nut trick should work. You put a couple nuts on there, a couple wrenches, and then turn the lower one lefty-loosey and it should get that stud out. Yes, it does work. So once you get that double stack tightened, sorry, I'm doing this one-handed, tightened up, that stud will come out. There you have it, folks. They are in. All right, guys, all the FIPG is removed, and next up, a couple things. One, use a non-residue solvent, so I guess I'll use acetone on the block there. And then also, you're gonna wanna wipe this down, even though it's brand new, on the surfaces that you're gonna apply the FIPG to. I'm gonna put this seal in, and I'm gonna use some grease. There's raging debates about whether or not you grease the inner lip on these. So I have this Toyota grease here. I'm just gonna do the inner lip of this. Okay, seal is in. I used my press to get it in. Grease the inner lip. And really we're down to the critical spot now where FIPG is in question. If you need to see what the factory did, flip over your old pump and take a look at it. So anywhere that you see 2 channels like this, you're gonna be putting FIPG 2 to 3 millimeters thick. And you can see the factory, it even oozed almost like inside of the pump there. So when you squeeze this against the block, it's gonna ooze upward. So you got some residue right here, and you have some inside of the pump. You gotta follow the factory service manual, guys. You have to bring it around on the inside of these holes. So this one's gonna come down and around right here. It's not gonna go down here. And this one on this side is just actually gonna go straight down right there. So do it right. Do it one time, do it correctly. Okay, there's the diagram in the factory service manual. I don't know why I'm so nervous to do this. I mean, this is pretty critical, guys. So make sure you get some new Seal Packing 103, this stuff. And if you buy it on eBay, you gotta be careful because it can be expired. So I got this from Bell Lexus. I assume it's not expired. I haven't checked the tube yet, but I got a couple tubes. Shouldn't require a couple tubes, probably one and a half for the entire job, including oil pans. All right, let's do this. Here's your expiration on the tube right there. So thankfully I have 8 months until this expires at the time of this filming. Double check that, guys. Not worth it. Okay, new microfiber, acetone, new pump. Let's see if there's any residual dirt. Yep, see? That's why you do it. Just keep wiping this until it goes completely clean. Especially be careful with dragging some oil accidentally onto your towel. It's your beautiful new OEM seal up there. There we go. Okay, let's do it. Do a tightening in sequence, and then the smaller 12mm head bolts are 11 foot-pounds. The 14 right there is 22 foot-pounds, and the hex, right, it's above that. It's right up there. That's 22 also. So 22, 22, and then the rest are 11 foot-pounds. Pay very close attention to your front crank seal. Make sure the lip right there is not bulged out towards the front of the vehicle. Otherwise, you didn't grease it enough and you're gonna have to redo it. Okay, the factory service manual says to install the strainer next, but I wanna point out that depending on how much room you have, if you're doing this with the engine installed, you may have to do oil pan number 1 first. So I just loose fit this up here just to see if I could clear it. And I can't slide oil pan number 1 on. And the reason they have you do the strainer now is because of this bolt that goes in here. So it can be accessed with the right wrench, but it's tedious and it takes a long time. It's because that bar covers it, that support bar across. So I just want to explain that to you guys. With the engine out, no issue at all, but with the engine in, it could be a concern with your subframe in the way. Okay, this thing's about ready to seal, and I want to point something out to you guys. Factory service manual, it's hard to see it, but the FIPG goes on the inside here, inside, 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 then switches to outside, right there and around. So it stays on the outside where the oil pan number 2 is going to be, if that makes sense. So after the support bar, you switch on your FIPG application from inside to outside. Okay, FIPG's applied. Here we go. Going up. Okay, oil pan number 1 is back on. You can see the FIPG oozing out. So these right here are 21 foot-pounds. So anything with a 12mm head is 21 foot-pounds. Anything with a 10mm head like these is... All right, now I'm gonna go for the oil strainer. Like I told you before, right up in here is gonna be a little bit difficult because of that crossbar. but because I removed it with the crossbar in place, I know it can be done. So replace the gasket and go for the strainer. See, told you it could be done. Okay, torque values here are 66 inch-pounds. Okay, next is the baffle plate. Your long bolt goes here, and all torque values are 66 inch-pounds. There we go, all torqued up. Easy. It says to use a solvent that won't take off the paint. Then we're gonna FIPG everything, and per the factory service manual, you go in the grooves, and then at the holes, you're gonna go with a real thin inside layer of FIPG right here. So groove, inside, all the way around. And then you gotta put it on within 5 minutes. So make sure you have everything ready. Okay, every single one of those, I think it's 12 or 14, I can't remember, is 66 inch-pounds. So go ahead and torque them uniformly, 66 inch-pounds. Okay, oil pan is on. Everything is torqued to value 66 inch-pounds. You can see my liberal use of FIPG going on oil pan 1 and oil pan 2. Next up, oil level sensor. I want to note that for this new gasket that you're going to use, there's the part number, and it's also in the video description, I think. There is a direction that the gasket faces, so pay attention to that. There is that side and this side. It's like a cupped side there. I'll get it out here in a second. So just make sure you put it the right way on the oil level sensor. The torque value on these 4 10mm bolts is 48 inch-pounds. 48 inch-pounds. All right, let's see if I can show this here. See how there's side? So the flat side goes against the aluminum housing. So it goes on like that per the factory service manual. So the sensor is not tightened down, but it only goes one way. There's not much clearance to get it in there, so you probably need a ratcheting wrench that you can get in there. 48 inch-pounds. I am at a stopping point because I got headers to do. I left some areas taped over, like the oil filter mounting location and where the dipstick goes, because those things are going to be much easier if they're removed for me to do the headers, which are up in there. So I've already taken the heat shields off, and headers will be next. So that gets you all the way to the oil pump and back with almost everything installed. At the time of filming, I have got the timing belt back on and things like that, but you're gonna have to go through all of that. So I just wanted you to know that it is possible to push your engine up, drop your subframe down, and get to the O-ring that leaks very often on these UZ engines. Thanks for joining me, guys. We'll see you on the next episode.